said to also to Indonesia that in the current context, we will find it very, very difficult to engage with Russia in the G20 context.
Halo Sobat Medcom, ketemu lagi di Newsmaker, medcom.id, obrolan hangat one-on-one bersama saya Alfa Mandalika. Indonesia terkena getah perang Rusia dan Ukraina. Sebab sebagai pemegang presidensi G20, Indonesia menjadi ajang tarik-menarik negara anggota G20 yang pro dan kontra kehadiran Presiden Rusia Vladimir Putin di KTT G20 Bali akhir tahun ini. Nah, sangat menarik untuk mendalami reaksi keras negara-negara anggota G20 kepada Indonesia, khususnya sikap anggota G20 yang juga anggota NATO atas kedatangan Putin ke Bali. Jurnalis Medcom ID, Marcella, secara eksklusif telah mewawancarai Duta Besar Uni Eropa, Vincent Piquet, untuk mengetahui seperti apa sikap resmi Uni Eropa atas konflik Rusia dan Rusia, serta sikap Uni Eropa setelah Indonesia mengundang Putin ke Bali. Dan inilah Newsmaker pekan ini.
Ambassador, we all know about the situation now in Ukraine. So what do you think about the situation there, and what has the European Union done regarding this crisis?
The European Union sees this invasion by Russia of Ukraine as the most serious security crisis we have witnessed in Europe ever since the Second World War. And you talk about something that happened 70 years ago. This is a massive military attack against a sovereign country. It was unprovoked by anything. It was illegal. It is incompatible with Russia's obligations as a member of the United Nations. There was no threat coming from Ukraine at all that could in any way have justified this attack. So we consider it very serious for the law and rule-based order in Europe, but by extension also in the world, because at the end of the day, Russia is a member of the a permanent member of the UN Security Council. It is a nuclear power. As such, it has special responsibilities to accept and to observe, and we don't see that happen at all. So what have we done about it as EU? First of all, already before the crisis, the invasion happened, we've done tremendous amount of diplomatic outreach to try and avert this invasion. It was unsuccessful. The invasion happened. We have, of course, expressed in all platforms of the UN in particular and elsewhere our strong support for Ukraine's territorial integrity. We have dismissed as totally unacceptable the attack, and we have, together with 140 countries from around the globe, there's not just East versus West, but 140 members of the United Nations voted 2 resolutions in the past weeks to strongly deplore this invasion and to ask Russia to cease fire and to withdraw its troops from Ukrainian soil unconditionally. So diplomatic action is one. Secondly, we have extended a lot of financial support to the Ukrainian government, 1.2 billion euros. So a massive amount of money for the government to basically keep the country running, to keep the salaries paid, and to help the government to provide humanitarian and social help. That's one. Secondly, the EU has done something that we've never done before, and that is provide military equipment assistance, the equipment of a defensive nature to enable Ukraine to defend itself against the military aggression from Russia. And lastly, what we've done is, of course, we've reached out to the Ukrainian citizens and to the many people, millions and millions of people. The numbers now go towards the 10 million Ukrainian citizens who are dislocated inside their country or who have had to flee their country, especially to Europe. And the numbers now are about 3 million Ukrainian refugees who have sought shelter in Europe. Europe has said immediately, we are open to Ukrainian citizens fleeing the war. We will accommodate you, we will provide you with shelter, with medical aid. You can find jobs, you can put your children in schools, etc. At least for 1 year, but maybe longer if needed. We hope not. So that is a tremendous humanitarian offer that we've made. Some of our member states, the ones that neighbor on Ukraine, there are 5 of them: Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, Romania, and Bulgaria. Of course, they have a tremendous inflow of refugees to manage, and the commitment and the solidarity that they show is absolutely fantastic. The government level, but also the citizens. But they don't stand alone. We have a system inside the EU for sharing the burden, the humanitarian burden, out among all the member states, and that's what we see take shape now. So that is what we are busy doing.
Okay, Ambassador. You said about the refugees, because the refugees already flee to EU countries. So there are any guarantees from EU to protecting the Ukrainian refugee?
Yes, 100%. That's what we have stated at the top level. Our heads of states have said that Ukrainian refugees will find shelter without distinction, wherever you come from. You will find shelter in Europe from this aggression, and lead a safe life for as long inside the EU for as long as it is needed.
The European Union has announced will discuss about the Ukraine membership. Has there been decisions about that? And if Ukraine be a part of the EU, will there any help for Ukraine in terms of military?
First of all, the EU leaders have indeed said to Ukraine, you will be welcome in the EU and you will become a member state. This is not easy, of course. It's not joining a gym or a tennis club, and you pay and you play. It is about becoming part of an integrated economy, an integrated society. So we have to prepare that very well. At the same time, we know the urgency of the matter. This is an unprecedented situation. And there is a political commitment from the EU leaders to reach out to Ukrainian citizens and to the Ukraine government by offering this perspective of membership. Second question you ask about military assistance. Bear in mind that the EU is not a military alliance. It's an alliance of states that together have built an integrated and united Europe in economic terms, in social terms, in political terms. We have over time also developed a defense cooperation amongst the member states, but we do not have an army. And the main objective of our organization is not to build one. But at the same time, in our treaty, there is a clause whereby member states have said we will protect one another in case of a crisis. and so that is looking into the future, but that is definitely a commitment for any member state to observe towards other member states as and when the country is inside the EU.
Okay,
I can't hear you.
Yes.
Sorry.
We move to the next questions. EU countries are among those that have also imposed sanctions on Russia. Apart from the war, what does the EU expect in presenting this sanction? Sorry.
Our sanctions aim to undermine and dismantle the Russian capability to wage this war in Ukraine. It is a military objective, if you like, through unmilitary means. But sanctions, we have put about 700 top officials of the Russian government and others who work with and profit from the government on our blacklist. We have put sanctions on the financial system of Russia. We're basically excluding it from participation in the international financial networks. We have sanctioned airlines, Russian, particularly the government-owned airlines, and put in place a ban on Russian overflights of our airspace and landing rights on our airports. So this is a massive package of sanctions, unprecedented. Again, it's not that we like to do that, but this is absolutely necessary. It's one of the key tools that we have in order to stem and push back the military attack of Russia against Ukraine.
Okay, Ambassador. You already said that EU already doing diplomacy before the invasion. So, do you still think that diplomacy is the main way to resolve this conflict?
There's two solutions to this conflict, and one, of course, is the decision by President Putin to cease fire and draw back the Russian troops from Ukrainian soil unconditionally. That is our bottom line. Now we will have to convince the Kremlin of this, and we will persevere. Diplomatic efforts are ongoing. As we speak, we are told, and read in the reports also, contacts between Ukraine and Russia in Istanbul, which is welcome. We very much hope that Russia will engage in these talks sincerely and with a real objective to reach at a minimum a ceasefire. And as well as humanitarian corridors, and also of that basis, after that, the withdrawal of troops. Humanitarian corridors are vital. You have seen the images coming from Ukraine of whole towns being encircled by Russian troops, cut off from the outside, no food, no water, no electricity. People sheltering in buildings that are sometimes under attack by Russian fire, missiles and airplanes. So a very, very grave situation. Repeated attempts to evacuate people from those besieged cities have been obstructed by the Russian military. Convoys, civilian convoys, innocent civilians who are trying to flee have been shot at and killed. So that is an absolute breach of any humanitarian principle of the humanitarian law that all UN members have to abide by, and these acts qualify as war crimes.
Okay, Ambassador, regarding we all know that Russia's give a nuclear threat in the region. So how does the EU respond to this?
well, we categorically reject that statement and that action as utterly unacceptable, unacceptable in Europe, unacceptable anywhere. And and we call on Russia to seek the way of diplomacy, of negotiation, to resolve this war situation.
So after the attack of the on the Polish border, did EU conduct the military reinforcement around the border?
We did not on that particular occasion. We are, as I mentioned earlier, we are not a military organization as in itself. But of course, this attack happened about 10 kilometers from the Polish border. The blast could be seen, could be heard from Polish territory. So it just shows how real this crisis is, not just for Ukraine, but also for Europe. And it explains, I think, in very simple terms, why the EU is so worried and why we are calling on all nations around the world to isolate Russia in its behavior, its aggressive behavior towards another European country.
Okay, Ambassador, the next question is, Russia said that Western countries made a lot of fake news about these situations. So what do you think about that statement?
Well, we can say with certainty that the source of disinformation, of fake news, is Moscow itself. If you look at how the Russian regime has legitimized their military attack, talking about denazifying Ukraine. Well, you try to find the Nazis in Ukraine. There is and you will not succeed. There is one extreme right party, far right party, which ran in the elections, last elections for the parliament in Ukraine. They gained 1.6% of the vote, and they did not make it to the Ukrainian parliament, just to show what the extent of Nazi presence is in Ukraine. It is an utter fabrication and disinformation, which is a polite word of a lie. And so the Kremlin is the source of disinformation in this situation. Utilizing, of course, all the outlets they have, the government-owned outlets. The EU has suspended two of these outlets, Sputnik and Russia Today. We have said this is not possible on the European soil to abuse our freedom of speech, freedom of press for warmongering, and hence this suspension. Let me also remind that freedom of media in Russia is non-existent these days. It was always problematic, but there's no independent outlets operating anymore unless they comply with the propaganda and the disinformation dictated by the Kremlin. Just yesterday, one of the last independent written media, Novaya Gazeta, had to announce that they had to suspend their operations because they couldn't do their job any longer. Just to illustrate where freedom of media and the press stands in Russia at the present moment.
Ambassador, some of EU member states are part of the G20 members. Then some of them think that Russia's membership in the G20 to be reconsidered. So how will the EU respond about that?
Indeed, we have five EU member states part of the G20, plus the EU itself. The 5 member states are Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands. So all in all, we are 6 of the 20. What we've said is that in the current situation, it can't be business as usual. We, in international platforms, we cannot deal and have dealings with Russia in the same way as if nothing happened. We've said to also to Indonesia that in the current context, we will find it very, very difficult to engage with Russia in the G20 context. And it's now for the Indonesian government to consider how it will move forward and which solution it will find.
And at the same day, when about the G20's issues come up, Russian ambassador in Indonesia had a press conference, and he said that West's reaction to these cases are very proportionate. So she compared the Israeli attack on Gaza and the US attack on Libya, which was not sanctioned. So what is your response about her statement?
Well, first of all, speaking for the EU, our peace missions abroad, outside the EU, are all under a UN mandate, UN Security Council, and that is our manner of operation. Secondly, it is very difficult and often misleading to compare one crisis to another. Different circumstances, different situations, and one-on-one comparisons are just impossible or irrelevant, and maybe good for the analysis afterwards for the historians, but not relevant for dealing with the situation right now. Because the third element is, whatever happened in other parts of the world, in Syria, in Afghanistan, it cannot be a justification for aggressive behavior right now. And that is just not possible. The justification does not exist. Threat posed no threat to Russia. It was not about to attack Russia. It was the other way around. It was Russia that amassed 150,000 troops, or whatever the number was, on the border of Ukraine. It installed military hardware, missile systems, and the like, and it attacked without any provocation. So that is the bottom line we have to deal with, and that is to say, to keep calling on Russia to cease fire, to respect the humanitarian corridors, and to withdraw the troops. And then we can, of course, the two sides in Ukraine and Russia can and should discuss the long-term solution towards a sustainable peace.
Okay, Ambassador, my last question about these issues. What solution does the EU expect from this conflict, and what do you want to do help Ukraine after this crisis?
Well, we want a lasting peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine. We want Russia to honor the respect for the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Ukraine's internationally recognized borders were recognized also by Russia at the time. So there's no dispute about that at all. And we just want to accept Russia to accept that fact. Secondly, about rebuilding Ukraine, the costs are enormous. You have seen the damage and destruction caused in the cities, apartment buildings, small houses, hospitals, schools, bridges, airports, everything. So we have no clue what it is going to cost. However, the EU in its summit of last Friday has said we will help Ukraine, we will raise funding ourselves, and we will set up an international fund for also other countries to come in for the reconstruction of Ukraine, Ukraine society, housing, social infrastructure, plants, factories, etc., as soon as the war is over.
Okay, Ambassador. Now we move to the relationship about Indonesia and EU. So how is the current Indonesian EU relationships now?
Well, we are very pleased with how the relations are developing. For us, Indonesia is a major partner in Southeast Asia. In fact, in Asia, you will have heard of the EU's new strategy for the cooperation with countries in the Indo-Pacific, and in it you will see a feature of Indonesia, as well as ASEAN, by the way, as a major partner. So we have a number of very important topics on our agenda. First of all, our free trade negotiations, almost halfway, let's say, in the negotiation track, and we hope that we can bring them to a solution soon. We know that this is good for both economies, but especially for the Indonesian economy. It's good for your trade, it's good for European investment here, and it is good for Indonesian jobs. The second big topic is, without a doubt, the global climate crisis. We haven't spoken about it a lot in the past 4 weeks, but it is there, and we need to cooperate very closely with together as Europe and Indonesia to combine forces and to develop common approaches, stimulate renewable energy development in your country, and to jointly work on the forest, of course, and on the greening of the economy as a whole. So that's a very big and tough agenda ahead, but we are ready for it, and we do expect that, also helped by Indonesia's G20 presidency, we can bring in a number of top-level interlocutors. Our presidents will come to Indonesia, our ministers and EU commissioners, minister equivalent, to strike new cooperation agreements between European Union and Indonesia.
Indonesia and EU has always been concerned about the palm oil regulations. So, and most recently, the European Union implemented deforestation-free product rules. And what is your opinion about this, and what solutions will EU provide to Indonesia regarding this issue?
First of all, on palm oil, let me make very clear that we have no dispute about palm oil in general. We have at the present moment a dispute about biodiesel made with palm oil. And now the good news, if you like, is that we are not quarreling about that. Indonesia has taken this dispute to the WTO dispute settlement procedure. So both sides have made their case there, and we just now need to wait for the ruling. And as loyal WTO members, the EU will always implement what comes out of the dispute settlement. Secondly, our new proposal, the EU Commission, our executive branch of government in the EU, proposed this new legislation for deforestation-free products. The regulation is, I think, going to be very workable for Indonesia, because the deforestation rates in your country have gone down tremendously over the past couple of years. It's not yet perfect, but we are very much seeing the trend in a very good direction. And it means that we expect that, reasonably speaking, crops like palm oil and timber from Indonesia will be able to meet the standards for the European market. It's not yet an unfinished business, but we are quite hopeful. Just last week, to illustrate, we have we had very intensive and good discussions at senior level between your government and the European Commission. And in 10 days from now, we also expect our minister rank commissioner for the environment to visit Indonesia to pursue the same discussions also with at governmental level with the ministers of Indonesia dealing with these topics. So I think we're in a good dialogue mode. Some hard work still to be done, but I'm quite optimistic.
Okay, Ambassador, as you know that Indonesia wants to have new capital city. So, is there any discussion about cooperation or investment with EU there?
We, of course, a fantastic project, and we are following this with great interest. Of course, also because it may mean that myself and my mission will maybe moving to East Kalimantan before too long. But leaving that aside, we're keenly interested in the opportunities for cooperation there. President Widodo has said he wants Nusantara to be a smart and green capital, and now there's plenty of know-how in that area available in the EU. We have some extremely well-run capital cities or provincial capitals throughout Europe, and so I'm 100% sure that we can bring something to Indonesia for the formation, for the development of your new capital, and it's quite exciting.
Okay, so and you know that Indonesia now as a chair of G20. So, is there any suggestions from EU about this, about the Indonesia presidency?
Oh well, certainly. I mean, we are very, very supportive of Indonesia's presidency. It's the first time ever that Indonesia has this role, so it's a great opportunity for Indonesia to profile itself on the world stage. We support topics that Indonesia has put on the agenda, on the global health side, on the global recovery, and the global energy transition. These are top priorities for the world, but also for the EU. So I think we'll be able to make a very good contribution to this at all levels. It's the official level, but also at the political level, and we look forward to that.
Okay, Ambassador. So the last question from me, what do you expect from the relations with Indonesia, and what kind of cooperation do you want to develop and strengthen with Indonesia in the future?
You know, this is a massive country, geographically and population-wise, and its economy is among the top 20 of the world already. And in, let's say, 20 years from now, it will be in the top 10 or whatever, but it will be a tremendously important economy. So there is a huge interest of ours to work with Indonesia to not only boost your GDP, but also to make sure that we work on sustainability and on sustainable growth, sustainable consumption by everybody, by you, by me. And those are the big ticket topics for us. And we look forward to Indonesia continuing its role on the world stage. This year it's the G20. Next year it's the ASEAN chair, and but also looking beyond that in its own right, we see Indonesia as a like-minded country. We look at global problems by and large in the same way, from the same angles, and we support the same objectives. So I think that there's plenty of ground for cooperation in many fields, domestically, but also internationally.
Ya, demikian tadi kita sudah menyaksikan wawancara jurnalis medcom.id Marcella, dan terima kasih untuk pemirsa Newsmaker. Kita akan berjumpa pekan depan dengan topik dan narasumber menarik lainnya. Saya Alfa Mandalika pamit, sampai jumpa.
Medcom.id, a part of Media Group Network.